Redskins Report. Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. Redskins just concluded their 2016 preseason. Hallelujah! 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 Finally, it's over. Get that out of the way. We can actually get to some football that matters. But before we can get to that, we have to trim the roster down to 53. And we get a head start on everybody else because we played our game a day earlier because of the tropical weather in Tampa Bay. So now we can discuss who we think is going to make this final roster, and it's very intriguing. I've got a lot of questions as to who I think is going to make this roster, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. Hopefully you guys can help me with this situation. So I made a list of the players that we all know have a shot to make this roster. Right now I'm looking at a list of, 3, 7, 13, 17, 25, 34, 38, 43, 49, 54, 57 players. So I'm looking at a list of 57 players. And the question now becomes, of these 57, which 53 make this final roster? Now, some of these guys that don't make the roster, I'm assuming are going to be put on the practice squad. That's if we can sneak them through waivers. No one else wants to snatch up our stuff, and we can put them on the practice squad. Now, I'm hoping we can get away with that with a few of these players. There are also a couple more players that I would love to sneak through to the practice squad, but I just don't think it's going to be possible. So here's the way I look at the breakdown for this Redskins roster. And again, if you're a Redskin fan out there, you want to chime in, use the hashtag LouieTLive to let your voice be heard. You got the comment section on YouTube. You have Twitter @InTheLabRoom, hashtag LouieTLive. I want you guys to help me sort through this mess and come out with 53 players on this roster. If you're a Redskins fan, want to hear what you guys have to say and how we do this. So let's start at the top. Let's start offensively. This is my breakdown, okay? And again, I want you guys to chime in. Redskin fans, I want you to help me figure this thing out. And we're going to come up with a 53-man roster together. So I've got 24 players on offense. I've got 26 players on defense. And then, of course, your 3 specialists for a total of 53 players on this roster. So let's start at the top on the offensive side of the football. You start at the most important position, quarterback. In my mind, Kirk Cousins, Colt McCoy, locks. Stone cold lead pipe locks to make this roster. Nate Sudfeld is a guy that I believe, and again, if, you know what, I'm going to just go ahead and open Twitter up because I want to be able to see real time what you guys are saying because, again, I want you guys' input on this. So I'm going to go ahead and open Twitter up, and I'm going to have it in front of my face so that I can see every tweet when it comes in. I should have brought my tablet out and had Twitter up. That would have been a lot more convenient, but what's done is done. I'll just have it here in front of me so that I can see what's going on. And I've got it propped up, so I'm fine. I got what I need right here. I'm looking at it. So I'll retweet this out so more people can join us. What's going on, JB? What's up, Brax? Okay, so to me, Nate Sudfeld is a guy that we would love to sneak on to the P squad. problem is he's not going to make it to the practice squad. If we cut Nate Sudfeld loose, I think we're a little nervous and a little apprehensive that someone will try to come and snatch our stuff up. We saw all of these injuries to quarterbacks around the league. We've seen how limited the backup quarterback position. This is a developmental quarterback here. I don't think you can take the risk of putting him out there on the streets and allowing another team to swoop in and steal our draft pick. So I think the Redskins realize the danger in thinking that they could sneak Nate Sudfeld onto the practice squad. And I think they're going to keep him on this 53-man roster, even though they would love to take that roster spot and devote it elsewhere. I don't think you can run the risk of cutting Nate Sudfeld loose. So in my mind, 3 quarterbacks. All 3 quarterbacks make this roster. Kirk Cousins, Colt McCoy, and Nate Sudfeld all on this roster. So you got 3 quarterbacks. Let's go to the running back position. I think this is going to be the most hotly contested and debated position on the team. But I actually don't think it's that hard of a decision to make if you're the Redskins. At first, I was saying, hey, we got to go out on the streets and find us another running back. I don't think that's the case anymore. If we got Matt Jones, who? Matt Jones. That's one guy. You got Chris Thompson. Obviously, those 2 are making this roster without a doubt. I think Robert Kelly, R. Kelly, he's making his roster. I think he solidified that against Buffalo last week. And I think Mac Brown pretty much sold it up for himself tonight that he's making his roster as well. Much like Rashard Ross did last year versus Jacksonville in the final preseason game, I think Mac Brown solidified himself a roster spot with his performance. And I think we're no longer going to be looking out on the streets. Now, I will say this. If someone releases a back that piques our interest, all of a sudden one of these guys may not make the team. However, right now, as it stands, I think all 4 of these guys have made their case to make this roster, and thus, I think we're going to keep it. Remember, last year, we kept 4 backs. Okay, now I know this isn't last season, but last year we kept 4 backs. Kept Matt Jones. We also kept Chris Thompson. We also had, who was the 3rd back last year? Oh, man. I'm tripping. Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris, Matt Jones, Chris Thompson, and then Darrell Young was kept as a fullback, but that counts towards your running back group. So we kept 4 last year. Why can't we keep 4 this year? I don't understand. So in my mind, 4 running backs. Mac Brown makes this roster. Tremendous night rushing. And I think he solidified himself a roster spot. Now, again, subject to change. Everything's fluid. We'll see who gets released. Once these other rosters around the league are trimmed to 53, everything could change in a New York second. Not a New York minute, in a New York second. If a guy shakes free that we are really interested in. Like, and I'll give you an example of a guy that I really would love to get my hands on. If the Tennessee Titans want to trip and get rid of Cobb, David Cobb, their, let's say, 4th or 5th round pick from just a season ago, hell, I'll take him. Sign me up. I was in love with David Cobb then. I'm in love with David Cobb now, and if I can get my hands on him for free, nothing's free, but you get what I'm saying. With no draft picks attached, sign me up. Maybe they like Bishop Sankey, who's another potential casualty. We'll see what happens. But as of right now, those are the 4 backs. I've got 4 backs. So 3 quarterbacks, 4 running backs. Let's move on to receiver. This, to me, is an open and shut case, but I got boxes around all the guys that I think are question marks. Right now, Nate Sudfeld, question mark. Got a box around him. Robert Kelly, Mac Brown, got boxes around them, even though I think both of them, all 3 of those guys are making the roster. In this group, it's pretty cut and dry. Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, Jamison Crowder, Josh Doxson, Ryan Grant, that's 5. And Rashard Ross is making his team 6. Have a box around Rashard Ross. If anyone's not making it out of this group, it would be him. But I don't see how he misses out on this 53-man roster. So in my mind, it's 6 receivers to go along with 4 running backs and 3 quarterbacks for a total of 13 offensive players thus far. Now this is when things get a little interesting. Tight end position. Jordan Reed. Jay Reed. Vernon Davis. VD. Niles Paul. Logan Paulson. Now, I'm going with 3 tight ends. Here's why. If you're looking to shave off a little bit of the fat on this football team, this is where you're going to do it. Even though I think I want to keep the lumberjack. I don't want to get rid of Logan Paulson because with one injury, we could be in a position where we were last year. Now, remember, we have a tight end on the PUP list right now that was on the football team last year in Derek Carrier. So just remember that we do have some stuff that in case we get in a jam, we got a guy right there that we can pull up and put onto the roster. So right now, I look at this football team. I think they feel good enough about Vernon Davis blocking. If Vernon Davis wasn't blocking well, and I heard Jay Gruden compliment him already, which means that sent off a little bit of bells and whistles in my mind. Red alert, red alert, red alert. That's not good for Logan Paulson. If they feel like Vernon Davis can block in the run game, the versatility that Niles Paul has to play tight end and fullback, I think a guy like Logan Paulson is on the outside looking in at tight end, which will give us 3 tight ends. I want to keep Lumberjack, but I think his time in D.C. might be up this season. We will see. But for me, I think that Logan Paulson might be the odd man out at the tight end position. Let's go to the offensive line, and then I'll read a couple of tweets and some comments to see what you guys have to say about the offense so far. Offensive line, I've got 8. Trent Williams, Spencer Long, Corey Lichtensteiger, Brandon Sheriff, Morgan Moses. That's our starting 5. And then on the bench, you've got Sean Laval, Ty Nsekhe, and Austin Ryder to back up the center position. So I think I look at this group here. I feel pretty confident about these 8. Austin Ryder got a box around his name because he could easily not make it, and they could go with 7 offensive linemen, 1 swing tackle, 1 swing guard, and that's it. Because Spencer Long can back up Corey Lichtensteiger at center. But the way I see it, what if Spencer Long goes down? Then you need a backup center. Now, obviously, you could probably take one of your guards and move him over to center if need be, but why not just have a backup center already on the roster in Austin Ryder, who I think has performed well this preseason? The way I look at it, Spencer Long's your backup center, but if something were to happen to him, you would have to insert a guard, probably Corey Lichten or probably Sean Laval, but then you wouldn't have a backup center at that point. You keep Austin Ryder on the roster all of a sudden. Now, if something were to happen to Spencer Long, you still have a backup center on the roster in Austin Ryder. And in a pinch, I'm pretty sure Ryder could also double as a guard as well if needed be. So I like that group. I like the way that it's set up. It looks like Ari Kwanjo is the odd man out here with the offensive line. I don't think they're keeping 9. I think they're going to keep 8. Again, trimming off some of the fat. If you want to keep extra guys at certain positions, like receiver, like corner, like safety, potentially, you're going to have to trim off some of the fat. And I think that's one of those positions where you can afford to do that is at the offensive line. So that's 24 in all. To recap the offense, I'm going to go over it quickly, then I want to read some of your comments. Quarterback, we're keeping 3. Kirk Cousins, Colt McCoy, Nate Sudfeld makes this roster because the Redskins don't want to risk losing him on the market. Running back, Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones. Chris Thompson, Robert Kelly, and Mac Brown all make this roster. That's 7. Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, Jamison Crowder, Josh Doxson, Ryan Grant, Rashard Ross all make this roster at receiver. Gives you a total of 13 players offensively. Tight end position, trimming off some fat here. Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis, Niles Paul, Logan Paulson, the odd man out. 3 there gives you a total of 16. And then we go to the offensive line. Trent Williams, Spencer Long, Corey Lichtensteiger, Brandon Sheriff, Morgan Moses, Sean Laval, Ty Nsekhe, and Austin Ryder for a total of 8 and a grand total of 24 offensive football players for this team. So let's look at Twitter. Then we'll go to the actual chat room and see what you guys have to say. So at Cold Beer for Life says, keep all 3 quarterback, keep all 3, which that's what we already discussed. At running back, Jones, Thompson, Kelly, and Brown. So he wants to keep all 4 running backs as well. Wide receiver, D-Jax, PG88, Grant, JC Ice, Doxson, and Ross. So he's keeping 6. So we're on the same page there. At tight end, he actually doesn't give the nod to Niles Paul. He takes Niles Paul off the roster, keeps Reed Davis and Paulson. I think the versatility, two things are going to keep Niles Paul on this roster. A, the versatility that he can play both tight end and fullback. We saw them move him around at the fullback position. Remember, Redskins aren't keeping a fullback on the roster, so they're going to need someone that's comfortable in that role. They feel like Niles Paul can double as the fullback. And also, probably more importantly than anything he does at the tight end position, he's one of the, if not the best special teamer that we have. And because of that, I think Niles Paul will make this roster. And at Cold Beer for Life, my man JB says he hopes that we keep all four tight ends as well as but I just don't see that being the case. I think, again, that's one of those positions you may be able to cut and trim off just a little bit of fat there if you're the Redskins. So let's go to the discussion board and see what's going on. Make sure you're using the hashtag LouieTLive if you want your comment read. Corey Fitterman says, just tuning in, so what role do you see Mac Brown playing? Right now, hard to say. I don't even know if he's going to make the roster because, again, I think he's one of those guys that makes the roster, but if they find a guy that they feel like can upgrade over Mac Brown, they may just do that. And I think if they find a running back and they got to pick between Robert Kelly and Mac Brown, I think Mac Brown would be the odd man out because you see how long it took Mac Brown to get on the field. I mean, obviously, they like Robert Kelly because he's been the guy getting the first team reps, the second team reps, not Mac Brown. So even though we all are madly infatuated with what Mac Brown brings to the table, obviously they don't share the same sentiment that we do because he would have been playing a lot sooner in the preseason, and that just hasn't been the case. So right now, hard to say what Mac Brown's role will be, but I tell you this much. Looking at him tonight, I can't understand how they couldn't understand that this guy is arguably the best running back on this roster, and that includes Matt Jones. So I want to see more. I've been saying that all preseason. We've all been saying that all preseason, that we want to see more Mac Brown. I don't know what else it's going to take. The man busted off a beautiful 60-yard run tonight, had about 160 yards rushing. I don't know what more the man can do. And I know it was against backups and guys that won't be playing in the league. Half of them don't care, okay? I don't care. Robert Kelly had the same opportunities tonight, and he only gained 99 yards. I hate to put them against each other, but Mac Brown's the more dynamic, more explosive, and to me, much quicker back than the two, and he runs just as physical as Robert Kelly does, if you ask me. But that's just me. I don't know how they feel, but that's just me. Moving right along. Let's see if we have any more comments. I'll answer that later, Ree. So, moving right along to the defense now. Make sure if you want your comment read, hashtag LouieTLive. All right. So, let's go to the defensive side of the football. I have 26 players making it on that side of the football. Starting along the defensive line. Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, Kendall Reyes, Ricky John Francois, Cullen Jenkins, Matt Ioannidis, Anthony Lanier, Trent Murphy, Kedrick Golston. Now, I just named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players. All right, 9 guys are not making this roster along the defensive line. It could be 8. I'm thinking it's going to be 7. And here's why. They like Trent Murphy as both an outside linebacker and a defensive lineman. So in their mind, if need be, they can ask Trent Murphy to stick his hand in the dirt, which gives them the flexibility to then get rid of one of their defensive linemen. Now, again, I think they're going to stash a couple of D linemen on the practice squad, and if they so choose, if they feel like it's a necessity, they can always bring one up on game day. But as of right now, I think they're going to use that extra roster spot and dedicate it to another position, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. But I think the 2 guys out of the 9 that I mentioned, I think the 2 guys that are going to be the odd men out are Matt Ioannidis, the rookie that we selected in the 5th round out of Temple, and Anthony Lanier, another guy that I really like out of, I think it's Alabama A&M or West Alabama A&M, wherever he's from. He had a really strong preseason. Looked good tonight again. I just think that it's a numbers game, and those two are going to get caught up and entangled in those numbers. They're going to be on the practice squad. I think both of those guys have earned the right to be on the practice squad. I just don't think they're going to make this roster. Now, I will tell you, I feel like both of those guys are better right now than Kendall Reyes. I don't think Kendall Reyes should make this roster, but guess what? He wasn't there today. And the fact that he wasn't playing in the game tonight lets me know that he's solidified his spot on this roster. And he's been running with the starters. Why? I don't know, because he stinks. He doesn't do anything. All he does is lean on blockers. He doesn't penetrate. He doesn't make any plays. To me, he's just dead weight. But obviously, Joe Barry is banging the table for him and thinks that he's going to get back to his San Diego Chargers form when he was a rookie and in his second year. I just don't see it happening. But they're going to go with Kendall Reyes. So those are the 7 that I have making the roster. I'll recap. 7 defensive linemen: Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, Kendall Reyes, Ricky John Francois, Cullen Jenkins, newly signed Cullen Jenkins, Trent Murphy, and Kedrick Golston are your 7 defensive linemen. Let's go to the outside linebackers. I've got 3 outside linebackers, but again, Trent Murphy, unfortunately, is going to have to double as an outside linebacker. So really, it's 4. But it's just 3 guys that are straight outside linebackers. But I've got 4 on the list. Ryan Kerrigan, of course. Preston Smith, of course. Houston Bates, and Lyndon Trail. Now, I have boxes around both Houston Bates and Lyndon Trail, which indicate that those guys are on the bubble. But one of those guys, at least one of those guys, has to make the roster. I think Houston Bates, because of his special teams prowess, is going to make this football team yet again. And so that gives you 3 outside linebackers. You stick Trent Murphy in there, and then you have 4 total. So I think that's what they're going to do at the outside linebacker position. And they're going to move pieces around. A lot of times we're not even in our base 3-4 defense. A lot of times we're in 4-3. We're in a even front because we're in nickel. So I expect that to be more than suffice. Again, health willing. We got to stay healthy. But I expect Lyndon Trail to make our practice squad. If we can sneak him through waivers, I expect him to be back on this football team when it's all said and done as a practice squad member. And remember, you now get to put 10 players on your practice squad instead of 7. So I expect him to be one of those guys that is on that final list of players. Let's look at the inside linebacker position. Yesterday I talked about keeping 4. Let's call it 5 because even though I look at Sua Cravens as more of a hybrid, a safety combination linebacker, he's for all intents and purposes a linebacker. So we're going to group him with the inside linebackers. And this list reads Will Compton, Mason Foster, Terrence Garvin, Martrell Spate, Sua Cravens. No one on this list is in danger of missing out on this roster. No boxes in this list. All 5 of these guys are locks to make this roster. There are no ifs, ands, or buts to me about this position. All of these guys will be on the 53-man roster. Let's go to cornerback. This is another one of these interesting positions. I've got 5 or 6 being kept. I think the number here is 6, but let's discuss. Josh Norman, Bashad Breeland, Kendall Fuller, Deshaun Phillips, Greg Toller, Quentin Dunbar. The only person here with a box is Quentin Dunbar. Of the 6 corners that I just named, the only one that played tonight was Quentin Dunbar, which tells you he's the only one with a chance to miss out on this roster. No Greg Toller tonight. No Deshaun Phillips tonight. No, we did see Kendall Fuller, so I take that back. Fuller was out there, but because he's a rookie. But we know they're not cutting a 3rd-round pick, so that's not even up for discussion. So of this group, only 2 guys were there, Fuller and Dunbar. We know Fuller isn't getting cut, so you can go ahead and lock up 5 of these guys. Norman, Breeland, Fuller, Phillips, and Toller. They're all making this roster. I guarantee that. So the question then becomes, do you keep Quentin Dunbar or not? If we don't keep him, you'd like to hope that you can sneak him onto the practice squad. But for as well as he played last year, big, long guy that can run, I'd like to think there's some teams, including some in our own division, that have seen him and will try to snatch him up if we decide to cut ties with him. So I don't know if that's something the Redskins want to risk. Right now, I have the Redskins keeping Quinton Dunbar as the 6th corner because that's a position where depth is always needed. You always can use an extra corner. There's never a situation where you have too many corners on your football team because that's one of those positions where it doesn't take much and a hamstring, an ankle, whatever, guys go down. You need to have corners on deck. So that's a position I think if you're going to overdo it at a position, cornerback is one of those positions you need to do it at. So I got the Redskins keeping all 6 of those players. Here's another interesting position, safety, okay? I've got 4 or 5 going down at safety. Here's the group. D'Angelo Hall, David Bruton Jr., Will Blackman, Duke Iheanacho, Deshazor Everett, okay? So of this group, the only person with a box is Deshazor Everett. Now, D'Angelo Hall, David Bruton Jr. weren't there tonight. They were at the luncheon back in Ashburn. They're making this roster. They're our starters. That's not up for debate. Will Blackman is making this roster. He was there tonight, played sparingly. He's going to make this roster. Duke Iheanacho, he played it again. He played tonight, played well. He was all over the field, hitting guys early. They got him out of there. He's making this roster. So 4 guys are stone cold locks to make this roster. Then the question becomes Deshazor Everett. Can we sneak him onto this roster? I think the answer is yes. Here's why. He's one of the best special teams players we have. And if you were watching tonight, and if you've been watching all preseason, Deshazor Everett makes plays. He's always around the football. He tackles very well, which we have seen on special teams. I think the combination of what he brings, this is a guy that's been on the roster the last, I want to say last year he was on the roster. He may have been on the practice squad the year before that. This is a guy that they're very comfortable with. And he continues to make plays. He continues to be a strong special teamer. I think they're very comfortable with the idea of putting Deshazor Everett on the final 53-man roster. And he's another one of those guys that I'm not sure if you cut him loose, you'll be able to get him back. So because of that, I have the Redskins also retaining Deshazor Everett for 5 safeties. So they went heavy in the secondary with 11 players. So let's recap the 26 guys that I have making the roster on the defensive side of the football. Then we'll get to some of your comments if you guys have any. So Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, Kendall Reyes, Ricky John Francois, Cullen Jenkins, Trent Murphy, Kedrick Golston for a total of 7 defensive linemen for a total of 7 defensive players. Outside linebacker, Ryan Kerrigan, Preston Smith, Houston Bates. Gives you 3 outside linebackers. You know, Trent Murphy doubles as an outside linebacker, but gives you a total of 10 defensive players. Then we go to inside linebacker. We have 5 in this category. Will Compton, Mason Foster, Terrence Garvin, Martrell Spate, Sua Cravens. Gives you a total of 15 defensive players. Go to the cornerback position. Josh Norman, Bashad Breeland, Kendall Fuller, Deshaun Phillips, Greg Toller, and Quinton Dunbar all make the roster for 6 corners, which gives you a total of 21 defensive players. And then you get to the safety position, D'Angelo Hall, David Bruton Jr., Will Blackman, Duke Iheanacho, and Deshazor. That's a tongue twister for me. Deshazor Everett coming in, barely sneaking in the back end of this roster for 5 safeties and a total of 26 players on the defensive side of football. That gives you a total of 50. Then, of course, your 3 specialists, Nick Sundberg as our long snapper, Tress Way as our punter, and D-Hop, Dustin Hopkins, as our place kicker. Boom. 53 players on this roster. So, what do you guys think about the overall 53-man roster that I have come up with? Do you think that that's how this thing is going to shake out? Do Do you have someone else sneaking in like my man JB did? Didn't have Niles Paul making his final 53, had Logan Paulson instead. What do you guys think? What do you guys have? So let's see if there are any more tweets out there. My man Boba Bonix says, Mac Brown needs to make this team, man. He's going to make this team. He's going to make this team. Question is, will he stay on this team? Because I think initially when the 53-man roster is released, he's going to be on it. If they find another guy out on the street, and again, there are some very tempting options out there because the Titans can't keep 6 running backs. They just can't. They got 6 guys, and I think we could see 2 of their running backs get released. 2 of them. And either one of them would probably be an upgrade over Mac Brown, which I think Mac Brown should be the one that stays. And if one of those guys had to go, I would like to see it be Robert Kelly. But again, that's just me. I think the organization likes Robert Kelly, likes his physicality, likes what he does, and they are going to keep him over Mac Brown should an opportunity arise for another running back to be signed and brought in. We'll see. See if we got anything else on Twitter. At Cold Beer for Life, my man JB says, I don't disagree with you at all. Hope we can keep Everett. Dude is a baller. I think he went out and just cemented himself a roster spot. I thought he played phenomenal tonight. And he's been phenomenal all preseason long. He's done nothing wrong. Forced a turnover versus the Jets late in that ball game to help secure that victory. He's been all over the place. And not only is he a solid defender, he's played on the field for us in the regular season before. Not only is he a solid defender, he's also a stellar standout special teams player, which I think is going to be the final thing that gets him on this roster. So I really think that DeShazer Everett, when it's all said and done, is going to find his way onto this 53-man roster. Let's go to the comment discussion board and see if anybody has comments. See what we got. Any chance you see Mac starting week 1, says HTTR Chris 27. It's up in the air. First and foremost, we got to figure out what's going on with Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones! We got to see if he's starting, if he's ready to go. Because if he's healthy enough to go, and the Redskins are going to put pressure on him to be ready to go, if he can go, he's going to be the starter week 1. If he's not ready to go, then that's when you get into whether it's going to be Robert Kelly or Mac Brown. So, and that's assuming Mac Brown makes the roster. I don't see why they wouldn't keep 4 backs. So, I still think that it's Robert Kelly. He started the game tonight. He started the game against Buffalo when Matt Jones couldn't play. I don't see that changing. That's the guy that they like. I think they like him more than Mac Brown. We've seen that all preseason long, even though, again, all of us feel like Mac Brown is the better back. And it's crazy because all offseason, in terms of the OTAs and the mini camps, all Jay Gruden kept saying is Mac Brown, Mac Brown, Mac Brown. And then all of a sudden, it turned into Robert Kelly, Robert Kelly, Robert Kelly. So I don't know what changed, but obviously Mac Brown is, I think, a little bit behind Robert Kelly in the pecking order at the running back position. Let's see. Leo Gutierrez says 100% agree. I think that's what it's gonna look like, man. I really do. HTTR Chris 27 says Scott was high on Lloyd Carrington. Do you think they'll keep him on the practice squad? I think he can make it. I liked what I saw out of him tonight. He does some really good things. It'll be interesting to see what 10 guys they decide to keep on the practice squad. And first is going to come down to who they cut. Which one of these, because like I said, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 guys with boxes around their name that are legitimate options for them to try to cut and stash in the practice squad. Now, I have of the 12 guys, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them making the roster. So the four left over would immediately go to the practice squad because they were so close to making it on the team. They're going to go to the practice squad. Lloyd Carrington might be a guy that they would keep on the because you need that kind of depth at that particular position, which he plays corner. You want that kind of depth on your football team at the cornerback position because that's usually one of those positions that becomes decimated throughout the season. It's a war of attrition, and cornerback is one of those positions that usually has some injuries, and you're going to need to pull a guy up from your practice squad. So I could see Lloyd Carrington potentially finding his way to the practice squad. Courageous Matt says, I like Lumberjack's case. I think Lumberjack's case of the drops tonight may have cost him a spot on his team. I think your 53-man roster is spot on. I hope that they reconsider, Lumberjack. But then this is the thing. If you keep Lumberjack, then which one of these other guys is going to get the axe is the question, I just don't know. If you ask me, and it's usually not a competition between two guys at one position. It's normally like, in the case of Logan Paulson, it may be Logan Paulson versus DeShazer Everett. Okay, it's not like it's Logan Paulson versus Niles Paul. They're not looking at it like that. They're looking at it like it's Logan Paulson versus DeShazer Everett. Do we value what DeShazer Everett brings to the table on special teams and as a safety more than we value what now that Logan Paulson brings to the table on special teams and as a tight end? And I think the edge would go there to DeShazer Everett because he's a better special teams player than Logan Paulson is. And because they feel like Vernon Davis can block, kind of negates the one thing that Logan Paulson does extremely well for us at tight end. So I think that's where you would see the nod go to a guy like DeShazer Everett versus Logan Paulson. So that's the way they look at it. They don't necessarily look at it as two players at the same position battling for one spot. You're going up against, Logan Paulson is going up against Austin Ryder. Do we value Austin Ryder as a center and think that we're going to lose him if we put him out on the street versus Logan Paulson? Which, Logan Paulson isn't eligible for the practice squad. So if you cut him loose, you got to hope he doesn't sign on with another team in case you need him later on down the line. But again, like I said earlier, this is another caveat why I think Logan Paulson won't make this roster. We have Derek Carrier on IR, a guy that I liked last year that we traded for. So they're not going to give up on him. We gave up a pick. Scott McCloughan liked him because Scott McCloughan was one of the guys that was in the room when he was selected in San Francisco. So, again, Derek Carrier, a guy that I think they like. And when he's healthy, he may be a guy that you see on this roster. So that also gives them a little bit of flexibility to be able to say, you know what, Logan, it's been fun. It's been a good run, but we got to part ways. So I think that's what's going to be the undoing of Logan Paulson. Let's see if we have more comments. Damon Brown says, you think the Redskins would consider signing former Bills running back Carlos Williams? They might, but again, you don't have to make a move on him right away. A, he's overweight. B, he's suspended for the first 4 games of the season, so no reason to touch him right now. Teams would want to see him make that dedication to get into shape first and foremost, and then they would probably come talking to him right around the time when that suspension would be up. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody – he's going to get work somewhere. Someone's going to call Carlos Williams up and see if he's in shape, bring him in for a workout, and if they like what they see, they're going to sign him up. I just don't know if that team is going to be the Redskins or not. Let's see. I'm going to get back with you, Ree, because you also asked a question a little bit early on. Make sure if you're out there and you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive. Be sure to use the hashtag LouieTLive if you got something you want to say and you want it read on the air. You got a question or something that you want to be read on the air, a question you want to be directed to me so we can talk about it, use the hashtag LouieTLive. All right, let's go to Twitter. At Cold Beer for Life, thank you for bringing up Garvin. I've been preaching about him all preseason. Dude is dynamic. He's not going anywhere. He's a core special teamer on this football team and depth at inside linebacker. If they were going to cut Terrence Garvin, they would have held on to Perry Riley Jr. You can't cut both of those guys because they do the exact same thing. They both give you depth at inside linebacker. They both are special teams players. So if you're going to cut one, you can't cut the other. Perry Riley Jr. already gone. So that means Terrence Garvin by default is going to be on this roster, which I think he earned this roster spot. It's not like a case of, oh, well, by default, because we don't have anyone else to do it, we got to keep Terrence Garvin. He earned his way onto this roster, played well all preseason long. see what else JB has to say. At Cold Beer for Life says, you think Cooper makes the practice squad like what I saw from him? It's possible. I think they like Lloyd Carrington a little bit more than they do Cooper. I don't know if they keep 2 corners. I know they're going to keep at least 1. So I think it'll be between the 2 of them. I also liked what I saw. And again, this is assuming, let's not assume that guys are going straight to the practice squad. That's assuming that teams around the league didn't like what these guys did and want to sign them, okay? It's not a foregone conclusion that, okay, we cut them, they're going straight to the practice squad. These guys have to clear waivers, and then the Redskins get an opportunity to put them on the practice squad. I also liked what I saw from Matthias Smith, the rookie safety out of Alabama. Thought he actually showed some good things on the field as well. So he's another guy that I think would be a prime candidate for the practice squad as well. So let's go down. I have more comments. Let's see. Miguel Noel Nosbaum says, are you still worried about the run game? It seems like there's potential in both Kelly and Brown. Still a little nervous about the run game because it's less about the backs, more about the offensive line and the cohesion and can they open up some holes. I didn't think we killed the Bills on the ground in the run game. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was great. We dominated the Jets, but the Jets didn't play some of their players, so I don't really know how to feel about that. There was no Muhammad Wilkerson, and I watched Muhammad Wilkerson tear the New York Giants a new one, and he makes a difference on their defensive line. Okay, so I don't really know how to feel about what we did to the Jets on the ground. Of course, today doesn't really matter because we didn't play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We played against the Buccaneers backups. So still have questions about the run game. But we'll see. I feel more confident about the running back position than I did, say, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I feel much more confident that the guys that we have on this roster are capable of doing the job. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I didn't know if we had anybody that could get the job done, outside of Matt Jones and Chris Thompson. Good to know that if Matt Jones, who we've seen gets injured, that we have guys on this roster that can step in and hold it down. Now, how good are these guys in pass protection? That's another question. Really don't know the answer to that. I've seen them in pass protection. They're okay. They're not great. So that's another thing that you got to worry about. Chris Thompson is excellent in pass protection, but he's small. I watched him get steamrolled the other day when he tried to step up and pick up a blitzer versus the Jets. He got mauled. Okay, so again, it's all about what these guys bring to the table. We'll see what happens. Should be interesting to see what they decide to do at that running back position. Lorenzo Simpson says, do you see the Redskins signing running back Pierre Thomas? I don't. I honestly didn't think they wanted to do it last year. Last year they did it out of necessity. When Matt Jones started to show a little bit of inconsistencies with assignments, blitz pickups, injury, they went out and got Pierre Thomas because they weren't getting the production they were looking for out of Alfred Morris. They felt like Matt Jones was starting to hit that rookie wall, making some mistakes mentally, putting the ball on the ground, injuries. So they went out and got Pierre Thomas and added him to the mix, even though, and remember, our general manager, Scott McCloughan, loves to get young players. If he can avoid older players, he will at all costs. Okay, we went out and got Cullen Jenkins because I like my beef well done up front. And I think he realizes that we need a veteran presence up front, a guy that can help us up there. And a lot of times with the younger guys, they don't get it done. Okay, they don't know the tricks of the trade. They don't know how to get it done at this level yet. They have to learn. And so I think you're more likely to see veterans be in positions like the offensive or defensive line, more so than a young guy that's inexperienced. Whereas at running back, look, you're not looking for an older guy at running back. You're looking for a young spring chicken. I say this about the cornerback position. Same applies at the running back position. The running back position is no country for old men, okay? And even though we all liked what Pierre Thomas did last year, and I wouldn't be opposed to signing him, I just think they much rather go in a younger direction than get Pierre Thomas. But if they're going to do it, it'd be after the Week 1 game versus Pittsburgh. If they don't like what they see, let's say one of these backs get injured and they don't get anybody out after the 53-man roster cuts, that would probably be the guy that they would call up and sign, would be Pierre Thomas, if I had to guess, if he's not on someone's roster by then himself. Courageous Matt says, I was hoping Kendall Thompson would get more looks after that one-handed catch versus the Jets. Do you think they might be trying to hide him for the practice squad? I actually think they like Maurice Harris more than they like Thompson. Now, I heard Thompson was catching everything, the rookie out of Utah that caught the one-hander and the two-point conversion versus the Jets. I heard that he's been catching everything in camp. But I'm more intrigued, and I've heard that the coaching staff as well is more intrigued with Maurice Harris. And normally you can tell who they're most high on by who they play and the pecking order in which they get on the field. And you notice in the Atlanta game when there was no Jamison Crowder and a lot of the starters weren't playing from very long, Maurice Harris was the first receiver to get on the field. Same thing when we played against the Jets, when there was no PG-88, no D-Jacks, and Crowder and both Ryan Grant did their thing early on. The first guys off the bench were Harris and Thorpe. So I think they like both Harris and probably Thorpe more so than they do Thompson. But again, we'll see what happens on the practice squad. Babarende a walkway. And, I'm sorry. I know I jacked that all up, man. I'm going to call you BA. I think we had this same conversation before a while back. So we're going to go with BA. BA says, can we cut Ross, please? It's not happening. We don't have anybody on kickoffs nor punt return right now. They may put Crowder back on punts, but kickoff return, that's Rashard Ross's all day long. And they actually like, and I actually like what Rashard Ross does when he gets in the game. Now, I think Ross is also insurance just in case Djax has some kind of ailment this year, whether it be a hamstring, ankle, anything. If Djax goes down, you still want to be able to stretch the field. That guy that's going to give us the ability to do that would be Rashard Ross. So ask anybody and they'll tell you the fastest player on the team is Rashard Ross. So you want to keep that element of speed. If Deshaun Jackson goes down, Rashard Ross would be our man. So I think he's going to stay on this roster. James McMillan III says, what do you think about Gio Mateus-Smith? I just talked about him. I really liked him. I thought he did some really good things. That's the rookie safety out of Alabama. I thought he played well. And I think I was just telling the rest of the live feed that I think that's a guy that could easily be on the practice squad. He's not going to make this football team, but it would not shock me in the least if they liked what they saw out of him, because I liked what I saw out of him, and they put him on the practice squad. I think there are a number of guys in that secondary that were ultra impressive. And again, I can't stress this enough. If I liked him, you liked him, and the coaching staff likes him, there's tape out on him now. Other teams around the league might like him as well and tell him, look, don't go to the Redskins practice squad. I'll sign you to my active roster. Come on, come with me. So there's no guarantee that he's going to be available for the P squad. He may be on somebody else's active roster. The man played well this preseason and put some good tape out there for other teams. So I don't know if we're going to get a chance to stash him away on the P squad or not. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. Let's go back to Twitter. At LER3AP3R says, any thoughts on Stephen Paya being cut? That one shocked me. I didn't really see that one coming either, but it makes sense because he's being paid not a lot of money, but enough money that he needs to be starting. And they haven't seen what they wanted to see from him. That speaks to the type of depth that they feel like they have. And once they went out and got Cullen Jenkins, that spelled the end for Stephen Paya right there. That was the end-all, be-all for him. If Cullen Jenkins was brought in and they didn't like the shape that he was in, didn't think he could help, Stephen Paya was going to be the guy that was going to stay on the roster because of that. But once they got Cullen Jenkins onto the roster, Stephen Paya became expendable. And frankly, he hasn't done anything to warrant staying on the roster. I was just hoping that he would have a much better year in 2016. I thought that he came over from the Bears. They played a 4-3 defense. It was a little bit of a different scheme. Now, again, we play a lot of nickel. He was on the field in that nickel, and he just didn't do anything last year. Then he gets injured. It just wasn't a good look for him here. So, unfortunately, I didn't see it coming either. But it's done. I like some of these young guys. I already told you that Anthony Lanier piques my interest, as does Matt Ioannidis. I don't see either one of them making the final 53-man roster, but I think both of those guys are young players that are intriguing enough to say, hey, we want to put them on the practice squad, develop them. I even like Corey Crawford, okay? I even like him, a guy that was on our practice squad last year out of Clemson. Really feel like he did enough to find his way back on the practice squad. So there are a number of guys that I would love for us to keep, but we just only have 53 roster spots. And again, you can't keep 3 defensive linemen. You can't keep 2 corners, a safety. You got to spread those spots around. You got to put a receiver on there. You got to put a corner on there, a safety. You got to put extra offensive linemen or 2. You got to put a couple defensive linemen up there. You can't just spread it or put all of 1 or 2 positions up there. You got to spread that stuff around. So we'll see. Good question, though, Brax. At Boba Bonnet says, I just want our running game to be serviceable enough to fend off opposing defenses. Just saying. I feel you, man. I feel you. I mean, look, we don't want Kirk out there slinging the rock 40 times a game. You know, we don't want look, what we want is we want light boxes because our passing game is dynamic, which I think we will get because Deshaun Jackson by himself commands a guy over the top. You leave him one-on-one, you're asking for trouble. So I think we're going to command light boxes. And because we're going to have 7-man boxes, soft boxes, we should be able to run the football. There's no excuse for us not being able to run the football this year. Because I think the passing game is going to be so dynamic that you're going to have to dedicate an extra safety back there to keep Deshaun from getting deep on you, to keep some of these other guys from working the middle of the field. Jordan Reed is dangerous. So if we are able to get soft boxes, the numbers match up, we should be able to run the football. And I think we have enough stuff at the running back position to be able to do that. There's no excuse for us not being able to run the football this year. All right, let's go to the next comment. At Cold Beer for Life, this receiving core is scary from start to finish. That's where that's where our bread is gonna be buttered this year. I agree, JB. They're gonna have to stop us from throwing the football, and I'm hoping that opens up the run game. I don't care if we pass to set up the run. I just want to make sure that we're able to run the football successfully. You know we want to do play action fake, so I think we're going to be just fine in that avenue. Robert Kelly, at Boba Bonnet says, Robert Kelly reminds me of Eddie Lacy. By the way, he runs with the toughness and physicality. Just saying also, yeah. He does run with a level of toughness and physicality. I like what I've seen out of Robert Kelly the last 2 games. And I said this before, I say it again. No, I don't believe he can fly. No, I don't think that, I don't think he's the world's greatest, but I do believe he can bump and grind, man. I do think he's a guy that can be physical in between the tackles. I do think he gets everything that's there. There was a run tonight that I think epitomizes why the coaching staff likes him. He got the football, made a quick, decisive jump cut, then made another cut, then darted into the hole and picked up about 7 yards on the run. And that's something you don't get out of Keith Marshall. You do get that out of Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones. But you also get that out of Mac Brown as well. And I think you get it out of Mac Brown a little faster with the same level of physicality. So we'll see. All right. See what we got. James McMillan III says, who is your preseason defensive MVP? Hard to say. A number of guys made plays. Martrell Spate's been all over the field. Forced a fumble. Was around on another one. Some guys have made plays. It's really hard to say. Hard to say who the MVP of the defense has been this preseason. A number of guys have done some good things. Mr. Year Deho says, what do you think of the Skins claiming Vincent Painter? That's the big offensive lineman out of Virginia Tech. Just a guy that they look at, and maybe Scott McCloughan, when he scouted him, when he was coming out of the draft, liked him. enough to the point where he said, you know what? I like this kid coming out of Virginia Tech. I think he has something. We'll snatch him up. We'll put him on the practice squad, and we'll work with him. And that's why I think a guy like Ari Kwanjo may be out, because I think they look at Vincent Painter and they see a guy that may potentially be able to play some guard. And at Virginia Tech, I want to say he was a tackle at Virginia Tech. So he may give you a little versatility there. So I think that's what the basis behind it was. Now, I'm only speculating. Again, I don't know. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, so I don't really know for sure. But I can tell you that I think they like him. You don't pick up a guy this late in the game unless there's something there that you like that you want to work with, obviously. So Lorenzo Simpson says, I'm still not convinced with the D-line. Do you see Pot Roast coming back on a vet's minimum for depth? Nah, I don't think they want any part of Terrence Knighton. I don't think that whole situation went well last year. And frankly, he wasn't that good for us. We got ran on last year and he was here. So I don't, again, if you're going to go with some depth, the two guys that I mentioned, and I know you're talking about nose tackle more so than defensive end, that 5-tech. But if you're looking for another nose, Matt Ioannidis has been playing nose for us all preseason long. Keep him then. Keep him for depth. But don't go out and get Terrence Knighton. Even though I told you I like my beef well done. I like veterans up front. Terrence Knighton didn't move the needle for me, man. He just didn't do anything for me. So, and you have every right. You have every right to feel a little uneasy about the defensive line because they haven't impressed me. And the fact that we still have Kendall Reyes starting, I don't like it one bit. Now, again, with the defensive line, it really doesn't matter who's starting because they're going to be rotating those guys in and out of the lineup so often that it really is irrelevant. But I don't like Kendall Reyes. I just don't. So I feel like his roster spot should go to somebody else like Anthony Lanier that can come in and actually make something happen. But that's just me. Once again, that's just me. Miguel Noel Nosbaum says, how do you think Cullen Jenkins did? I love what He had a play where he got a sack one, okay? He had a play where he split the offensive lineman. The guard didn't. He snapped the ball. He split the lineman with a swim move. Before the guard could get over there, before the center could react, he was already in the backfield. He was impressive tonight. I thought he did well, and he showed exactly why they went out and snatched him up. I think he's going to help us, man. I think he's going to give us some really good snaps, and I think he's going to provide some nice depth for us along that defensive line. So I'm excited about what he brings to the table. It makes me a little bit more comfortable with what we're putting out on the field because he's aggressive. He's not like Kendall Reyes. He's not going to allow a guy to just block him and just stand there and eat up a block and not do anything. He's more aggressive. He's trying to penetrate and get into the backfield. And that's what Joe Barry's scheme is all about. It allows defensive linemen to be able to penetrate one gap and get up the field. They're not two-gapping these guys. They're not asking them to just hold up blockers, which is what Kendall Reyes does. Joe Barry's like, go be aggressive. Go get in the backfield. One gap. Go make a play. And that's what Cullen Jenkins is looking to do. He's looking to one gap, get in the backfield, and make plays. So I liked what he did tonight. I really did. See what else we got. At Cold Beer for Life, I would cut Reyes if it was me. He's slow and applies no pressure. I'd keep Lanier for sure. I agree. I think that would be the best option. But again, I don't see them doing that. Reyes didn't even play tonight, which lets you know he's a lock on this roster. Joe Barry, that's Joe Barry's boy. And he brought him in from San Diego. He's comfortable with him. I don't like him. I don't like him at all. But, again, it's not up to me. So, he's going to make this roster. And I think Anthony Lanier, if we're lucky, if nobody else was watching, we're going to get to put him on the practice squad. I see that guy being a prime candidate to being placed on the practice squad. So, no more questions on the live feed. No more tweets. That's going to do it for me. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Redskins. Real quick, my man Ree asked a question earlier about his Bucs. What do I think about Roberto Aguayo? I don't like him still. That 50-yard field goal barely got over the crossbar. And you know it. Okay? As a contrast, our kicker kicked the field goal from about 47, and it hit the net with about 8 to 9 yards to spare. Your boy is struggling, man. He struggled all preseason. He got his act together against the Browns in week 3 of the preseason, made a couple of field goals in that game. I don't like him, and I didn't like the fact that you spent the second-round pick. I got my eyes on him. I'm watching him, Ree. I think you made a mistake. I told you that when you drafted him, and I'm telling you that right now. We're going to see. I'm rooting for him to do well, though, okay? I can put my ego aside. I want to see the young man do well for your sake because you struggled with the field goal kicking position last year. But I'm just telling you, I was not impressed with him in the preseason. I wasn't impressed with him at Florida State. Even though he's the most accurate kicker, his kicks were all close to me. The deep ones, the far ones, he struggled with them last year. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. But that's just me. You know how I do it, Ree. So, that's going to do it for me. Thank you all for joining me. Let's see what the 53-man roster ultimately looks like. I think you guys are all in agreement with me. It's going to look something close to what we've all come up with tonight. Maybe 1 or 2 players, they may deviate. You know, maybe a guy at the end of the roster like a DeShazer Everett doesn't make it. Maybe they decide to keep a Logan Paulson. We'll see what happens, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to be too far off from what we've done here tonight. So, thanks for joining me again, and you'll see me very shortly as we get closer to the 2016 regular season. Have a good one.